Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrzej Czulak, and here I am a leader of the Polish cluster of Composite Technologies. Today's presentation is not an academic lecture on LCA. I want to show why composites companies should start thinking about this now. Increasingly, customers, investors, tenders, and regulations no longer ask only about price, weight, and strength. They also ask, what was this product made from, how much energy was used, what is its carbon footprint, and what happens to it after use. The goal of this presentation is to show that LCA can be started with simple steps, and the tools and guide we've prepared are meant to help with exactly that. In this presentation, I'd like to show, in a very practical way, why LCA and carbon footprint are becoming important for composites companies. We won't start with complicated standards or formula. We'll start with a simple question. Why a customer, a buyer, or a procurement department may soon ask you not only about the price and technical parameters of a product, but also about its environmental impact. I also want to show that you don't need to launch a big, costly project right away. You can start by collecting basic data, using a calculator, and understanding the logic of LCA with the help of a prepared guide. Composites are very attractive materials. They are light, strong, durable, and often help reduce energy used during the use phase, for example in transport. But that doesn't automatically mean the whole product has a low environmental impact. With composites, you need to look at the entire life cycle, where the fibers, resins, and additives come from, how much energy the production process uses, how much waste is generated, what transport looks like, and what happens to the product after use. Without LCA, we only see part of the picture. We may know that a product is light and strong, but we don't know whether it is really better for the environment than the alternative. LCA lets us see the full picture and calculate the impact instead of relying only on intuition. This becomes especially important because the market and regulations are starting to demand hard data. It's worth saying clearly, this isn't about every single composite product having mandatory full LCA from tomorrow. It's about the direction of change. The European Union is introducing regulations that require increasing transparency of product and environmental data. The ESPR, that is Ecodesign for Sustainable Products Regulation, creates an eco-design and digital product passport framework for a very broad group of physical goods. The new CPR Construction Products Regulation strengthens requirements for construction products, data flow in the supply chain, and environmental information. The CSRD-TA's Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, in turn, means large companies also report impact across the value chain, so they will ask suppliers for data on materials, emissions, and carbon footprint. For composites manufacturers, this means one thing. Even if the obligation doesn't come directly from a regulation, it may come from a customer, a tender, or a procurement department. Since data will increasingly be required, let's look at what LCA gives a company in practice. LCA isn't just a document for the drawer. A well-executed analysis helps a company make better decisions. First, it shows hotspots, the stages where the greatest environmental impact is generated. Sometimes that will be the fiber, sometimes energy in the process, sometimes production waste or transport. Second, LCA allows a fair comparison of options. Different materials, different technologies, different suppliers, or different end-of-life scenarios. Third, it helps choose a better product design. This is very important because LCA doesn't only describe an existing product. It helps improve it, reduce energy use, cut waste, make better use of material, and prepare arguments for customers. But to carry out an LCA, we need data. That's why it's worth starting by checking what our supply chain looks like. This demonstrator is a good, simple starting point for companies that don't know where to begin. It allows a quick and anonymous assessment of supply chain resilience. You can find this tool on the Resilient Supply Chain for Europe project website, resi4eu.com, or by scanning the QR code in the lower right corner of this slide. Why is this related to LCA? Because LCA relies on data from the entire chain: materials, suppliers, energy, transport, waste, and processes. If a company has a single supplier, doesn't know the origin of a material, or has no data on energy use, that's not just a procurement risk. It's also a problem for environmental calculations. The demonstrator helps move from a general feeling, I think we have a risk, to a more concrete result. It shows which areas are worth organizing first. It's a good first step before a fuller LCA. Once a company starts seeing its data and flows, it can also look for opportunities to reduce impact. This is where industrial symbiosis comes in. Industrial symbiosis means that something which is waste, a byproduct, unused energy, or water in one company can become a resource for another company. For the composites industry, this is a very important direction because we have material waste, offcuts, production residues, and often challenges related to product end of life as well. You can find this demonstrator on the Resilient Supply Chain for Europe project website, resc4eu.com also, or by scanning the QR code in the lower right corner of this slide. But the idea of reuse alone isn't enough. We need to calculate whether we are actually reducing environmental impact. LCA answers the question, does this change reduce the use of virgin raw materials, reduce waste, and lower the carbon footprint, or does it just shift the problem elsewhere? Thanks to this, industrial symbiosis stops being a slogan and becomes a measurable business model. Now that we've seen the regulatory pressure, the benefits and example tools, let's move to the most important question. Why start now? The key message is simple. Whoever starts today will be better prepared tomorrow. Customers will increasingly ask for data, not because everyone has suddenly become an LCA expert, but because they themselves will have to report, compare suppliers, and reduce the risk of greenwashing. LCA can also help with costs because lower impact often means less energy, less waste, and better use of material. That's why I encourage you, after this presentation, to take a very simple first step. Pick one product, gather basic data, and check it in the free calculator. And if you want to understand the process step by step, the prepared guide explains the basics in a practical way. The free calculator and the guide you can find on website www.composite.net or by scanning the QR code shown on this slide. To close, I'd like to leave you with one sentence that sums up the whole presentation. The rules of the game really have changed. For years in composites, the most important things were technical parameters, weight, strength, durability, price. These are still key, but environmental data is increasingly being added to that list. Companies that can show reliable product data will be better prepared for conversations with customers, for tenders, for reporting, and for building competitive advantage. That's why I wouldn't treat LCA as an extra obligation, but as an investment in future sales and the company's resilience. I encourage you, start with one product, use the calculator, get the guide, and see where the real environmental impact in your product comes from. Thank you, and feel free to contact me.